back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast and for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, September 3rd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comment recognized. Make sure to go to the Super Chat icon, the $ icon in the chat. This will display a super chat on the live broadcast. If you have any questions, any comments that you want to make, that I will acknowledge and shout out. And it's just a great way to make the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. That's really what it's all about. Any contribution that you can make to the show really means the world to us, and we greatly appreciate it. So there's that way, but there's also the other way to help out the show, is that by going to the link below the chat, show segment, which is GSMCpodcast.net. But like I said, we appreciate your viewership each and every day. Any contribution you make means the world to us, as we give you guys content each and every day throughout the week. So, with that being said, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So you saw a little snippet of it, as I had that one of my standings predictions up there. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins, where they kind of fit amongst the contenders in the AFC, and why some people believe that they're not a serious contender in the AFC. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Cowboys. Are they in for a regression year? They didn't really have a big offseason, so I'm kind of just going to talk about where the Cowboys are currently sitting amongst the teams in the NFC and what to expect out of them, even though we've kind of talked about them a lot, and I've kind of already given my opinion on it, but we'll just talk about it again. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about a couple of quarterbacks ahead of their Week 1 matchup. We'll talk about Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts, the expectations for them going into the 2024 season, what kind of years that they're going to have, and who's more likely to win MVP this year. So we'll get into that. Eagles and Packers play on Friday night in Brazil. Then in the fourth and fifth parts of the show, we'll talk about the NFC West. So I'll do my standings predictions for that, even though you kind of already saw it. And then we'll do my AFC East standings predictions, because I want to get these in before Thursday. So we're doubling up on the standings predictions. So let's get into the first topic now, which is talking about the Miami Dolphins. So last year they went 11-6. They made the playoffs, but they played in that frigid weather in Kansas City, and they ended up losing that game to the Chiefs. But according to league coaches and executives surveyed by The Athletic, the Dolphins are not widely viewed as Super Bowl contenders within the NFL. And I wanted to talk about that. So where do I kind of view the Dolphins amongst Super Bowl contenders? I don't think they're in that first tier of teams. Well, I think the Chiefs are kind of in the class of their own. But when you look at some of the other teams in the AFC, I wouldn't put the Dolphins ahead of the Ravens. I wouldn't put them ahead of the Bengals with a healthy Joe Burrow. The Bills, I know their roster has kind of changed, but they have made it to a championship game within the last few seasons. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, look, when we get to the AFC East standings predictions, I do have the Jets finishing higher than the Dolphins. So, might have to put them ahead. The Dolphins, though, they have the talent. I just, when it comes to their talent, they have it. When you look at their offensive playmakers with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and, Tua had a productive year last year, and now he's coming off of a big contract. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Actually, back to the teams, I forgot to put the Texans there. I actually would put the Texans ahead of the Dolphins as well, with the moves that they've made this offseason. But Dolphins got a ton of talent on offense. I know their defense have to retool it a little bit. Guys are coming off an injury, and some other guys left in free agency. Christian Wilkins, Anthony Van Ginkel. They had to release Xavier Howard. So, defense is going through some changes. But they got the talent. The problem is, when they get to late in the season, and they get off to fast starts. But late in the season is when things kind of crumble. And also the fact that Mike McDaniel, in his 2 years as a head coach for the Dolphins, they're 0-2 in the playoffs. Now, context does matter, because when you go back to the first playoff game, there was no Tua. They lost that game to the Bills, I think, 34-31, and that was with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. The Dolphins actually had a chance to win that game. Now, the Bills kind of helped them out a little bit because there were some turnovers in the game. But that was a game they could have won. And then last year, I don't think really any team was beating the Chiefs in that temperature, in those temperatures. I just don't think that was happening. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is not much the playoff losses. It's more so the collapses towards the end of the year in the regular season. That's the problem I have. I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass for those 2 playoff losses. Also, it was against the Bills and the Chiefs. And the game against the Bills, you were playing Skylar Thompson. It's really the collapses, especially last year. You had an opportunity to have a top 2 seed in the AFC, and you choked that away. You end up losing that final game of the regular season in your own stadium against the Bills, and instead of having a top 2 seed, you're going on the road to play Kansas City as a wild card team. And the other thing, too, is, as my camera starts to act up here, the other thing, too, is their record against teams that are over 500. The only team that the Dolphins beat over 500 last year was the Cowboys, who struggled on the road. And that game was a tight game. Jason Sanders, I believe, kicked a game-winning field goal. Other than that, you go up against... All right, well, that didn't work. Other than that, you go up against the Ravens. You go up against the Chiefs in the regular season in Germany. And, you end up... You don't win those games. You got swept by Buffalo twice. The Eagles before their collapse. Man, my camera just does not want to work. The Eagles before their collapse. I'm trying to think of who else. Who else I'm missing. But they just struggled against teams that were over 500. So that's really where the criticism comes from. I would see the collapses and the record against better teams. That's really where my criticism will come. Not so much the playoff losses. Now, do they deserve some criticism for that? Yeah. But let's see if this team can finish with the higher seed and you got these better teams, coming to their stadium, how they fare. Because again, they lost to Buffalo at home, but they lost to Buffalo at their stadium. The final score was, I think, 48-20, whatever it was. You got blown out by the Ravens. Well, when they played the Chiefs in the regular season, that was in Germany. But the Eagles was also on the road. But in order for them to be true Super Bowl contenders, they got to be able to beat these teams. And Tua had a nice year last year. But, you're taking Patrick Mahomes over him. You're taking Lamar Jackson over him. You're taking Josh Allen over him. You're taking Joe Burrow. C.J. Stroud. They didn't play against the Texans, but I think they do play each other late in the season, I believe. Yeah, they do. Because the Texans do play the AFC East this year. So that's really what it comes down to. And for the defensive side of the ball, you got guys trying to come back from injury, and went through some changes. They had to let go of some guys. So we'll see how the defense plays. They're playing against the Jags to start off the year. We'll see what kind of season the Jags have after their late season collapse. The Jags really collapsed. That was a team that was 8-3. And they missed the playoffs. They finished the season 9-8. So it's going to be interesting, but that's really where, when it comes to the Dolphins, that's where the criticism comes from for me. Go out there and beat these better teams, and you get off to these fast starts, but continue that. Don't fall off towards the end of the year. I do think Mike McDaniel's a good coach. I think he's the right guy. So let's see. But the talent is there. Now they just got to go out and execute. So, but when it comes to them being AFC contenders or Super Bowl contenders, they're a little bit lower on the totem pole. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, they should be a playoff team. But we'll have to see how it all plays out. But let me know what you guys think about the Dolphins. How do you see them performing in 2024? We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we will talk about the Cowboys and if they're in for a regression year. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Cowboys and whether or not they're in for a regression year. We have a Hawaiian 5-0 in the chat. What's going on? Hope everything is well. One of the Football Podcast regulars. He hasn't been in the chat in a little bit, but hope everything is well. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the Cowboys ahead of their Week 1 matchup against the Browns. And similar to the Dolphins, NFL executives or coaches believe that the Cowboys may regress in the 2024 season. And, I guess it has to do with coaching and, the kind of offseason that they had. Because they did lose pieces. The running back situation is not great. I mean, they brought back Ezekiel Elliott, and now they recently brought in Dalvin Cook. And if it was 2019, this would be the best backfield in the NFL. But it's not the case. These guys are a little bit older and past their primes. So that's one issue. The Dak Prescott contract situation, that's going to be hanging over their heads for the whole season because it doesn't look like they're getting that done before the regular season starts. So, I mean, they at least got CeeDee Lamb's deal out of the way. They got him done. But that's the one thing that's could be hanging over their heads the whole year is Dak's contract. And, I've been saying all along that I think Dak is on his way out the longer this drags on for. I mean, I could be wrong. A deal could be signed tomorrow and everything is right in the world again. Because Trent Williams actually recently worked out a deal with the Niners. So, there was some concerns that he wasn't going to be playing in Week 1 against the Jets. Well, he's going to be playing. So the Niners got all their contract situations out of the way. But the Cowboys with Dak Prescott, that still remains to be seen. Also, I'm hoping Jamar Chase signs a new deal soon because I need him this week in fantasy. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of a regression year for the Cowboys, I mean, they've been a team that, consistently wins, 11, 12 games the last couple of years. And, for the most part, they're finishing, first or second in the NFC, or the NFC East. And this year, I do think that they're going to finish in second place. I have the Eagles winning the division. But in terms of regression, I mean, other than maybe finishing in second place, I think the Cowboys are where they're always going to be. They're going to be a good regular season team. They'll put up good stats on both sides of the ball. But ultimately what's going to end up happening is they're going to get to the playoffs and they're going to lose. That's really how I see it going. Now, if they miss the playoffs, that'll be a major disappointment for them. And, things are going to have to change. Because, with Mike McCarthy, they haven't really gone far. Now, even with Dak Prescott, they really haven't gone far. The furthest they've made it is the divisional round. Really, the best year for them with Dak was probably his rookie year, honestly. Because they were the number 1 seed. They had one of the best offenses in the league. You had prime Zeke, you had prime Dak. Well, I shouldn't really say prime Dak, but you had prime Zeke. That was your chance to do it. even last year. You know, like, you didn't have prime Zeke, but, well, you didn't have Zeke at all. But the NFC was weak last year. That was your chance to do it, too. But they ended up losing to the Packers, who were the 7th seed. Cowboys were the 2. You know, they would have been able to avoid the 49ers until the NFC Championship game. But they ended up losing to the Packers. And then the best chance that they had, best chance that they had back in 2016, that was also against the Packers. That was the Aaron Rodgers. You know, last year was with Jordan Love. So, in terms of regression, I mean, maybe they lose one more game or two than they have in the regular season. Like, instead of 12-5, maybe they go 10-7, 11-6. I think that's what I had them around finishing. But other than that, I don't really see a ton of regression. Because I just think with the stars that they have, with Dak, with CeeDee Lamb, on the offensive side of the ball, and then you got Micah Parsons on the defensive side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence, and you know, you got Trayvon Diggs coming back. I just think that, you know, with the guys that they have, you know, they're going to get their regular season wins. You know, they play in a weak division outside of Philly. You know, they're going to beat up on Washington. They're going to beat up on the Giants. Well, I know the Giants they'll definitely beat up on. You know, I don't know when the Giants are ever going to come out from underneath Dallas. I mean, the last time that they beat Dak was 2016. Dak Prescott does not lose against the Giants outside of his rookie season. So the Giants got some work to do, you know, before they are able to beat Dallas. But I just think the Cowboys are going to continue to be a good regular season team. Now, I'm curious to see how the running back situation is going to be. Because right now, I don't really know what to expect. Like, again, you bring back Zeke, you bring in Dalvin Cook, you got Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle. But who's going to separate themselves as the lead back? You know, the Cowboys are going to be able to run the football. You know, and they lost guys in free agency. You lost Tyron Smith, you know, who's been a staple on that offensive line for years. You know, and I also just think they're a little bit thin and wide outside of CeeDee Lamb. You know, you can't afford an injury to him. Because Brandon Cooks has passed his prime. I mean, they got Jalen Tolbert. I know I kept saying Kevontae Turpin, but Jalen Tolbert's the guy that they're hoping has a big year. And you got Jacob Ferguson at tight end. So they got weapons on this offense. But I do think, you know, if CeeDee Lamb goes down, that's going to be a huge problem. So they got to hope that he, you know, stays healthy the whole year and is able to. Oh man, excuse me. Yeah, still battling this cold that I got, so just bear with me. But we're getting better. We're getting better, but it's just it's still lingering, which is very annoying, but it is what it is. But yeah, they're a little bit thin. So I do worry about, you know, an injury. So, and even, you know, on the defensive side of the ball, one of the biggest concerns with the Cowboys is depth. You know, if some of their starters go down, because already Deron Bland's out, so, you know, that's a big injury on the defensive side of the ball. You know, if the injuries start to pile up, you know, how is that going to impact this team? So, that's really my biggest concern. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of a regression year, yeah, maybe they lose one more game or two, but they're still going to be a playoff team. I can't keep Dallas out of the playoffs. Now, is it possible they miss it? Yeah. I mean, you know, it's not like they have made the playoffs every single year for the last 10 years. But outside of the COVID season, with Mike McCarthy, this team has made the playoffs. Made the playoffs in 21, 22, 23. So, I mean, I expect them to be a playoff team. It's just, what are they going to do when they get to the playoffs? I don't think that much. They had a chance. I picked them to go to the NFC Championship game last year. I did. Because I just thought, they're playing a young Packers team. And then I think I had them playing against the Lions again, but I think I had them winning over the Lions. And then they had them playing the Niners. But they didn't even get out of the first round. But that's kind of what it's been with Dak Prescott. You make the playoffs, but can't get out of the second round. They haven't made it to a championship game in a long time. And I think that's going to continue. And if that happens, could be seeing a lot of changes. Not just head coach, but at quarterback too. And it really, if they move off of Dak Prescott, it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing. Like, does Trey Lance end up taking over? Now, I know it was a preseason game, but the way he looked in that game against the Chargers, 5 interceptions and 2 fumbles, not good. Not good. Did have that big touchdown run, but, the bad outweighed the good in that game. But it's a preseason game, but still, that's just, you don't want to see that. So, we'll see what happens, but let me know what you guys think. What kind of season do you think the Cowboys are going to have in 2024? So, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comment recognized, go to the $ icon in the chat. This will help you create a super chat. Any comment that you might have or might want to see displayed during the live broadcast, it'll put it out there. I'll acknowledge it during the broadcast, and it just makes the show more lively between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, and any contribution that you can make to the show means the world to us. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment, GSMCPodcast.net. Again, any contribution you guys can make to the show would mean the world to us as we put out content each and every day for you guys to view. So, when we come back from our next break, we'll talk about 2 quarterbacks ahead of their Week 1 matchup on Friday, Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts, as they get ready to square off in Brazil. And we'll talk about the kind of seasons that I think they'll have and, who is more likely to win MVP. So we'll get into that discussion when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about 2 young quarterbacks that are set to square off in Week 1. Kind of just talk about their matchup as well as my expectations for these 2 guys going into the 2024 season. So let's get right into that. So, these 2 quarterbacks, did make the playoffs last year. Kind of different seasons, for these two guys. If I can try to get it up. I don't know why my graphics are not working here. But they are coming off of different, one of them started off strong. All right, so we got it up now. One of them started off strong, record-wise. Well, actually, they both started off decent. And then, the Eagles had their collapse. And, the Packers, they looked like they were one of the worst teams in football at one point. But Jordan Love got things straightened out. And, played like an MVP candidate down the stretch. But these are their stats from last year. Jordan Love threw for more yards, more touchdowns, had less interceptions. The one problem with Jalen Hurts last year was the turnovers were up. His interceptions, his fumbles, combined, did turn the ball over more, which is something that, if you're an Eagles fan, you're hoping goes down this year. Now, these two are set to square off for the first time, as starters. Now, Jordan Love did come in. Now, the Eagles and the Packers did play a couple of years ago. And that was in Philly. Aaron Rodgers was the starting quarterback. But he ended up leaving the game. I forget what the injury was. It was like a rib. Was it a rib injury? I forget. Whatever it was, he left with an injury. Jordan Love came in relief. And he did throw a touchdown pass to Christian Watson. But now this is the first time that these two quarterbacks are squaring off as both of them being starters. And both teams going into the year have high expectations. I expect both these teams to be playoff teams. I have the Eagles winning the NFC East. And then for the Packers, I got them finishing in the North, but I have them making it as a wild card team. Now, in terms of their teams, I do think Jalen Hurts has a better supporting cast around him. But I do think Jordan Love has a solid supporting cast around him. Both of them have solid offensive lines. But when you look at the receivers, I mean, Jalen Hurts, it's really no contest. I mean, he's got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, you're going to take those guys over what the Packers have. Now, that does not... I don't want to disrespect the Packers receivers because they got a bunch of solid young receivers. But A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are really good receivers. A.J. Brown's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And Devontae Smith is a solid number 2. But they are a 1A and a 1B together. So, and then you also have Dallas Goedert. You add him to the mix as well. Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft were solid last year for the Packers, but I would take Goddard. And then when you look at the running backs, it's pretty close. I mean, you got two running backs that'll be making their debuts with their new teams. You got Saquon Barkley with the Eagles, and then you got Josh Jacobs with the Packers. I mean, Barkley's, a little bit older than Jacobs. That one's kind of a toss-up. Maybe he'll kind of lean towards Barkley. But, I mean, both of these offenses should be solid. The Eagles went through some changes with their coordinators. You got Kellen Moore now calling the plays. So, we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles are going to be solid again this year. I think that collapse is going to be a thing of the past. Now, people do worry about, how is Nick Sirianni going to be? But I don't know. I just feel like they got way too much talent. I feel like this team is going to be really good once again. But in terms of who I think has a better chance of winning MVP, now, like I said, I think Jalen Hurts has more talent, or the better talent. And, Jordan Love is going into his second full year as a starter. And, there's still some unknowns there. I mean, we kind of know what Jalen Hurts is at this point. Jalen Hurts is solid. But, what is Jordan Love? Now, I do think Jordan Love is going to come out and have a very good year. I mean, didn't really play that much in the preseason, but the one, series that he did play in, he threw that touchdown pass to Dontavian Wicks. So are we going to see more of that? I think so. I don't know. I kind of lean towards Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love has a good chance to maybe win MVP. A better chance to win MVP over Jalen Hurts. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards that way. But again, Jalen Hurts, I think, has the better talent. But I don't know. I'm kind of riding Jordan Love here. I think Jordan Love, out of these two guys, I think I would take him to win MVP over Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts gets those rushing touchdowns. But, we saw a lot of improvement out of Jordan Love towards the end of last year. And he played really well in that playoff game against Dallas. Again, there's still some unknowns with him. Like, is he going to be able to continue to do this? But I think that's more of the Jordan Love that we're going to see. So, like I said, when it comes to MVP, give me Jordan Love. When it comes to these two guys, I would take Jordan Love over Jalen Hurts. But let's see how they match up against each other on Friday. It should be a great game. Really excited for it. I think it's arguably the best game of the weekend. I mean, there are some good games. Obviously you got the game on Thursday. I think the Sunday night game, I know we saw it in the playoffs, but, Stafford making his return again to Detroit. I think Jets 49ers has the potential to be good. The Cowboys and the Browns, like that matchup. There are some good games that I'm looking forward to. But this one on Friday could be the best game of the weekend. You got this young Packers team against this Eagles team that's trying to turn the page off of last season's collapse. And I don't have a pick for this game yet. I still didn't make my picks. But it's definitely a toss-up. I mean, I think the line has moved because I think the Packers were excuse me. They were 1.5 point underdogs. But I think the line has moved up to 2.5. So yeah. Yeah, so it was basically a pick 'em, and now the Eagles are 2.5 point favorites. So kind of leaning towards the Eagles right now, but subject to change. I'm not going to make it official until we get to Friday when I make my picks. Because we'll preview this game. We're going to recap, the Chiefs game. And then it's all previews the rest of the show. So, I'm really excited for that. So, but like I said, I think both teams, I expect them to make the playoffs. One of them, I expect them to be a division winner. Now, can the Packers win the NFC North? Absolutely. They split with the Lions last year, but in my opinion, that's their competition. It's between them and the Lions for the division. Because the Vikings, although I like their roster, they're still, now I don't really know what to expect out of the quarterback position. That's really the biggest problem with them. And then the Bears, you got a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams starting. So we'll see how that plays out. And then when it comes to, the Eagles, well, I talked about it in the last segment. I mean, they're going to be battling it out with Dallas for the top of the NFC East. So, but I'm really excited for this matchup. I'm excited to see the running backs. Well, I shouldn't say I'm excited that Barkley's an Eagle, but I'm excited to see how those guys do with their new teams. How do the young receivers build off of last year? Because you got Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed going into their second years. I'm hoping Christian Watson has a big year. Romeo Dobbs is still there. Got him as well. I like the Packers receivers. The tight ends are good. Like I said before, how's the defense going to be with their new defensive coordinator? Same thing with the Eagles with Vic Fangio. So, both teams have new parts. And they're going to be on full display on Friday. But don't forget that game is going to be on Peacock. So make sure, you get a subscription or somebody that has a subscription so you're able to watch this game. Because this game is going to be very entertaining, in my opinion. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on these two guys. Let me know what you guys think. What kind of seasons do you think these guys will have? I think both guys are going to have good years. But when it comes to MVP, I like Jordan Love better in the MVP race than I do Jalen Hurts. So, I think we'll be talking about Jordan Love as being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Because he played like that towards the end of the year. So, let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments. So, we are going to take our next break. And then, when we come back, I'll do my schedule predictions for the NFC West. So, we're going to do them. And then we'll also do the AFC East standings predictions in the final part of the show. So, back-to-back schedule predictions, and then probably going to do the same thing tomorrow, do two of them, because, again, I want to get them all in before Thursday. And then on Thursday's show, I'll give you my Super Bowl prediction. I'm still trying to put that together. I'll have to think about that over the next couple of days. I do at least have, I think I have it, but, nothing's final yet. So this is what we'll do when we come back. Talk about the NFC West when we come back from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to talk about the NFC West. We'll get into my schedule predictions, standings predictions. Now, I know you saw a little bit of that at the top of the show because I, kind of spoiled it, but this is what I have for the NFC West. So, I went back and I was watching my schedule prediction videos because, I just kind of did a rough, prediction. I kind of kept things the same for most teams. I had the Cardinals at like 5 wins, but I gave them one more, so I got them at 6-11. The Seahawks, I had them at 7-10. I'm going to keep them at 7-10. The Rams, 10-7. Niners, 13-4. What I do find interesting, though, is that a lot of people have the Rams, or I shouldn't say a lot, but I've seen like multiple people, having the Rams in first place, putting the Rams in first place, which I think is interesting. But I can't do that. I mean, unless, the 49ers are dealing with a ton of injuries, which is like what happened during the COVID season. I think the Niners are still the class of the NFC West. I do think that this is still their division to lose. And I think they're going to continue their dominance within this division and ultimately finish in first place once again. The Rams, I expect them to be a playoff team. It was an interesting year for them, because they kind of surprised people when they went on the road first game of the year and beat Seattle. And then they kind of struggled in the middle of the year. Kyron Williams got hurt. Stafford missed a game. But, once Cooper Kupp came back, Kyron Williams came back, that offense got rolling. And they played really well down the stretch. And ended up making the playoffs. They lose that tough game to the Lions by a point. But I just think that, I think they'll be a playoff team again. Now, the one thing that, you got to worry about is how is that defense going to be now without Aaron Donald? Because those are some big shoes to fill. And they addressed the defensive side of the ball in the draft, and they brought, some guys in the secondary. So we'll see how that all plays out for them. But that's my concern. And also, you want to make sure that your guys on offense stay healthy. Now, Matthew Stafford is coming into the year healthy. Cooper Kupp is coming into the year healthy. Puka Nacua, I know, had an injury in camp, but, he's going to be ready to go for week 1. But how is that all going to play out throughout the season? Kyron Williams supposedly is going to be returning punts, which I don't know how I feel about that. They also drafted Blake Corum out of Michigan. So they got a nice backfield. But, I just think if the offense stays healthy, and they also did bring back DeMarcus Robinson as well, who was productive for them last year as their number 3 receiver. Tyler Higbee's still going to be out, I believe. If the offense stays healthy, and the defense is solid, I mean, I think 10 wins is doable for them. For the Seahawks, new head coach, Geno Smith has been good for them. I do think at some point we're going to see Sam Howell. I don't know when, but I think we're going to see him. But I don't know. I feel like new head coach. Now, Mike McDonald has been spoken very highly of by people around the league. But maybe this is not the year for them. But, I mean, the Seahawks have a lot of talent, especially on offense with their receivers and, the running backs. But I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit of a regression from them just because, rookie head coach and, the quarterback situation. But we'll see. Could they be in the mix for a wild card spot? It's possible. I mean, I think the last couple of years they have finished 9-8. Last year they didn't make the playoffs, but the year before that they did. So, but I think 7-10 is realistic for them. And then for the Cardinals, with Kyler Murray, I mean, I still don't know what to expect. I mean, we'll see what happens. They're going to be more competitive with Kyler Murray now being the starter for the whole year, because last year he didn't. He came back later in the season. Josh Dobbs was starting. He had Clayton Tune start a game. But this is still a building block year for them. This is all about making improvements, and I do like their offense. With Kyler being healthy, you got James Conner. They drafted Trey Benson, another running back, but you got Marvin Harrison Jr., who you also drafted with your first selection. Trey McBride, I'm expecting a big year out of him. Their young tight end was a real weapon for them last year, so I expect a big year out of him. Marvin Harrison Jr., let's see how he is with Kyler. I mean, I think that combination should work. But I still think 6-11, unfortunately. But I wouldn't be surprised if this team, finishes with a better record than that. Because with Kyler for a full year, they're going to win some games. But it's tough, man, when you get the Niners and the Rams in your division. We'll see how it goes. But that's what I got for the NFC West. Niners at 13-4, Rams 10-7, Seahawks 7-10, Cardinals 6-11. The Cardinals, they open up against the Bills. Seahawks open up against the Broncos. Rams open up against the Lions. And then the Niners play the Jets on Monday. So we will see how all those games play out. And like I said, I'll make my picks on Friday. So make sure to tune in the show for that. I mean, I'll give you my, obviously, when Thursday comes around, I'll give you my pick, for the Thursday night game. But yeah, Friday we'll be making picks for everything. So make sure to tune in for that. It's going to be all picks and recaps. Because I'll recap Thursday night. I'll preview the standalone game on Friday. Then I'll, preview the early window games, the late window games in another segment. So look, football's back. I'm so happy that it's back. Got 2 more days though, before we get to Thursday. So I'm really excited. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think though about the NFC West. How do you see that division playing out? Let me know in the comments. But I want to make sure that that I have the other division in, because I guess I forgot to put them in the graphic here. That's why everything was blank and nothing was popping up. But yeah, it happens. I mean, I had them downloaded to my computer. I just didn't, put them in the graphics here. So yeah, let me know what you guys think though about this division. How do you see it shaping out? I mean, even if the records aren't accurate, that's kind of how I see the division playing out. With the Cardinals in last, Seahawks in third, the Rams in second, and the Niners in first. So, but yeah, let me know how you guys see that division playing out. It's going to be a fun division to watch. But I do think it's interesting that some people have the Rams winning this division. I mean, I think they have the talent. But I don't know. I just think, Kyle Shanahan, since the Niners really have become a contender again, because the first couple of years, McVay owned Shanahan, but that's because McVay had a better team. But then when Shanahan got a really good team, it all changed. Shanahan has really owned McVay the last, few seasons. But really, it's really been since, the Niners got Nick Bosa and went to the Super Bowl in 2019. They've owned him. So, now last year they split, but that was because late in the season, they had their backups playing. The final game of the regular season. So, we'll see what happens this time around. But yeah, so we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will take a look at my AFC East standings predictions. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. So, for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, I got my AFC East standings predictions. So like I said, we're going to try to get through these divisions. I'm going to try to double them up. Well, tomorrow we'll do 2. And then on Thursday, we'll do the last one. So we'll do the AFC West, which is actually fitting because the Chiefs do play that night, so that's when we'll do it. So these are now I kind of have to adjust the I have to adjust the graphic here because I literally just put it in now, but yeah, that's what we got. So I actually did have the Jets winning when I went back and I was listening to my when I watched my my schedule predictions for the Jets. I had the Jets winning 12 games, and I was like, And in the video, I was like, oh yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I feel like 12 games is a little too much. I mean, I know I still got them in 11, but I was like, I don't really know about 12. So I gave them 11, and I got the Dolphins and the Bills both finishing at 10-7, and then the Patriots at 4-13. Look, you guys know me. I have been high on the Jets all offseason, and I know it's a big risk because they could definitely blow up in my face. But I just feel like with the talent that they got and, with the defense, the offensive line retooled, got Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and healthy Aaron Rodgers, I do think this team will be more competitive and will be a playoff team when we get to January. And I think they're going to finish on top of the division. Now, it's not going to be easy. And I wouldn't be surprised if, it ends up blowing up in my face. But I'm willing to give the Jets one more shot. One more. And if it doesn't pan out, then, this team is going to get blown up. You're not going to have, Saleh is going to get let go, Joe Douglas, Nathaniel Hackett, Rodgers is probably gone. And you're probably going to have a new regime coming in. Like, there are so many jobs that are on the line with this year. So they really got to hope that it pans out. But Yeah, I'm drinking that Jets Kool-Aid, and I'm going to say that Aaron Rodgers gives us one more good year. Now with Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall has another big year behind an improved offensive line, and that defense continues to play well. And now is backed by now. Let's see how this defense now plays when they have an offense that can actually generate points, and an offense that they can rely upon. And look, I know Aaron Rodgers is coming off of a major injury, and he's 40 years old. Odds are stacked against him. But you know what? The odds have been stacked against him a lot over the course of his career. And at times he responds. And I think this is one of those cases. Now I know he only has one Super Bowl, and I wish he would have won more. But I think at least for this year, he's going to respond and he's going to take the Jets to the playoffs. Now, how far they're going to go in the playoffs remains to be seen, but I think Aaron Rodgers and the Jets will be playing in January. I do believe that. So, I got them in first place. The Bills and the Dolphins, I both got a 10-7. I do think, I know I talked about the Dolphins earlier in the show. I do think they will continue to struggle against better teams until proven otherwise. I think with the Bills, you know, I still think they're going to be a good team, but I don't think they're going to be one of those. I don't think they're going to be a top 2 seed. Well, in order for them to do that, they got to win the division. But yeah, I think the Bills and the Dolphins, they're going to be looking to try to get in through the wild card. So, but I mean, I still think they're going to be good. You know, they're going to be in the thick of it. And look, I mean, I got the Jets winning the division. So, you know, it's possible that that doesn't happen and one of these two teams wins the division. But for me, I got them battling it out in the wild cards. And we'll see who makes it and who doesn't. So, got those two teams there, and then got the Patriots at 4-13. You know, this is a rebuilding year for them. And Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter. Drake May probably will come in at some point later in the year, which I guess is the right approach. Drake May did look good in the preseason, but, you know, how the offensive line looks, I mean, I don't think people really want to see him get sent out there. So I'm fine with what the approach that they're taking. But yeah, this is kind of how I have the AFC shaping out. Even if the records aren't, like I said with the last division, even if the records aren't accurate, this is how I see it playing out. And I know it's out, it's a take, and I know a lot of my friends who are Jet fans may not agree with it because, you know, they expect the worst. But I am going to be optimistic. And I'm hoping that, I mean, the biggest thing for me is I'm just hoping Aaron Rodgers goes out there and plays well and doesn't get hurt again. That's really what I'm hoping for. Because I've said it, I just don't want him to go out like he did last year. You know, I want him to go out on some sort of a high note. You know, if this is it for him. So, and I think the arm strength is still there. The mobility is not, but that's expected. I mean, he's 40 years old. But if he's healthy and he plays, you know, good enough, you know, the Jets can, you know, finish with a winning record and, you know, maybe make the playoffs. So, that's my thoughts on the AFC East. Let me know what you guys think. How do you see this division playing out? So last night, I wanted to bring this up before we ended off the show here. So last night, Florida State and Boston College played. Now this is going to the world of college football. And Florida State lost again. They're now 0-2. And huge win for Boston College. But, yeah, I mean, the bigger story is Florida State losing. I mean, the final score of that game was 28-13, I believe. Yeah, it was an ugly loss. DJ Uyunglele, he threw for 272 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception he had. Florida State ran the ball for only 21 yards. But yeah, it was just an ugly loss. And, you know, this really puts their playoff hopes on life support. And it's just been a disappointing stretch for them because, you know, you got Jordan Travis get hurt late in the year last year. They don't make it into the playoffs. You know, they're upset because they went undefeated and they were on the outside looking in. Then they lose. They get destroyed by Georgia in the bowl game that they played. Then they lose last week against Georgia Tech. And now they lose here at home. So it hasn't been a good stretch of games for them. And, you know, who knows what ends up happening from here. But, yeah, 0-2 to start the year after going undefeated last year. It's unfortunate. But we'll see, you know, if they can right the ship and get things back on track. But not looking good. But props to Boston College for getting the win there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up briefly. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Again, I apologize. I'm still trying to get over this cold allergy thing that I have. So don't think I was crying on the show because I know there was a comment the other day about that. I'm not crying. It's just I got some congestion that I'm trying to get over, which again, I'm better than I was, but still not there yet. So hopefully we get there eventually. So you don't hear me, you know, sounding the way I do. But that's where we're at right now. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love. And, yeah, so until then, I'm Kenneth Runefelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.